too small, I got big dreams.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Pun Fun, where we have fun with the puns. My name is Ryan, and we're gonna check out a awesome interview with Bryan Baugh. So, hi Bryan Baugh.
How you doing?
Great, thanks. And so Bryan is he's the creator of Wulf and Batsy. He's also a storyboard TV animation artist for Disney, Hasbro, and he has actually a pretty extensive list. So it can go from Winnie the Pooh, it can go, actually the list just keeps going on. And we are super excited. Actually, first discovered Bryan via Wulf and Batsy. So I've started reading the first issue, second, and it goes on to volume 4 on the first behalf. But then what happened is that he actually got published by Alterna. So this is Alterna's take. So I have, read the first, few books, and I did compare to this book here. And there's actually a substantial amount of, differences. And I love the way how it's actually sectioned off. So without further ado, we're going to get into this interview. I mean, I'm definitely fan, Boeing on this side. So Bryan Baugh, is that your actual name, or is that alias that you use?
Nope, that's my real name.
That's amazing. I mean, for the industry, for the type, the genre, I mean, it works perfectly.
Even the weird spelling, that was my mom's idea when I was born, not mine.
And without necessarily giving numbers, maybe, referring a moment in time, how old are you?
Well, let's see. I'm old enough that I got to experience a good 5 or 6 years of childhood before Star Wars existed.
Okay, well, there you go. Wow, okay. Before the Star Wars frenzy, that's awesome. Yeah. Are you a Star Wars fan, by the way?
Oh, hell yeah. Lifelong. I mean, yes, it basically came out when I was 5 going on 6.
Oh, yeah. So that was like the
perfect
sweet
age.
Spot. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I grew up with it. I mean, the original trilogy came out 3 years apart, so that was perfect for me. So, I mean, that was just hitting all the check marks of exactly. Childhood years, and then there was that long gap when there was no movies, and then all of a sudden in my 20s the prequels came out, and
right.
And I'm just I'll.
And how about now with the
let's put it this,
and the whole.
Oh, I love it. I mean,
it's a love letter to the fans.
For me, love is blind when it comes to Star Wars, pretty much. I mean, I would be a terrible movie critic because I just love everything. but no, I mean, when everybody else was trashing the prequels, I was just like, well, they're not the way I imagined it would be, but
right.
It's still got some cool stuff.
Yeah, and we got something new, right? So like, why not?
Yeah, and I loved Force Awakens. I thought that movie had a great spirit to it, and I loved the introduction of the characters. I was disappointed by Last Jedi.
Okay.
but I thought,
I mean, they can't all be winners, right? You're bound to have some ups and downs, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I predicted this one in 2012 when Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney. I immediately was saying to all my friends, okay, Star Wars just turned into Star Trek. We're now going to go because we're now going to go from having just the 3 special movie or the 6 special movies that was all we had to now there's going to be so much content every single year. It's going to be like,
right.
James Bond or Godzilla movies where there's just going to be a million of them. And there's going to be good ones and bad ones from now on.
Absolutely.
And so
but I mean, Favreau's
for the
been doing
most part,
great
I love
work.
it. And Mandalorian, oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's like everything I wanted Star Wars to be as a kid. Because as a kid playing with the toys, like my favorite stuff was, I love Darth Vader, I love Luke, of course, but my favorite stuff was the Galactic Underworld and Jabba the Hutt and Boba Fett and all the aliens. So a whole show dedicated to that corner of the universe was just like heaven for me.
Awesome. Yeah, and
I
followed you on Twitter, and I can see your love for it. It's like every episode would end, and right away you'd be like, okay, this is what I predict either for the next episode, or this is what they got right, and this is. I was like, all right,
I can't
this
help
is cool.
it. Yeah.
So in your art, so how many years have you been drawing actually?
Well, I don't remember when I wasn't. Let's put it that way.
Okay, fair enough.
My mom will say you started drawing when you were like 3, but I don't remember being 3, and I don't remember not drawing. So it's just something I always did.
All right, great. I mean, because we have people that sometimes at an older age they'll pick it up. But I mean, if you've always done it, then hey, I mean that's a great environment to, get it going, and especially if everyone around you was supporting it too. Cool. Yeah. And when did you know that this was no longer just a hobby? This was something that you wanted to pursue as a career?
Well, it probably helped that I wasn't good at anything else.
Okay. So it was like the last straw.
Yeah. It's like, well, it's this or nothing, I guess, you know.
And it worked out well. I mean, hey, you have so many books out and a fan base, and
for better or worse.
And was there a specific? So was there something in particular that made you take that decision, besides the fact that you said that this was one of your talents that you knew that you can key on?
It was just, what else am I going to do? You know, it's like when I was a kid in school, every teacher would say, he draws good, like, but he's terrible at everything else. Like, you know, he's too lazy to pay attention in math class. It's like he's drawing cartoons when he should be paying attention. Like, I just wasn't good at anything else. And this was what I loved to do. So, right. And that's where your passion pushed. It was like this or bust, you know? so there, it was not even a decision. It was just a given. Like,
yeah, no, absolutely.
What choice do I have? You know? My dad claims he was never a big comic book fan, but he must have had a few. Okay. I remember him showing me like Romita era Spider-Mans, like where he's fighting the lizard, like when John Romita drew it. Wow. So that had to have been from his collection, you know what I mean? Right. So and I had an older cousin. I remember we went on a family trip to California when I was a little kid, and I had my Spider-Man Mego doll, and my cousin was like, "Oh, you like Spider-Man? Look at this!" And he was bringing out his comics, which again, that time period, it would have been early '70s. So I was seeing early Spider-Man comics, and I had like a little scattering of like House of Mystery and Tomb of Dracula and Werewolf by Night, because I would just want the monster comics that I'd see. And that was
big back then. I'm surprised it hasn't been. I mean, they tried it again at some point where they did bring back like Unleash Monster, I think, for Marvel. Yeah. But that was a big era of like how people got into comics. It was also because they had introduced the horror genre and, you know, murder mysteries and you know, so those things were like I had them, but they were random. I wasn't collecting every issue. Right. And I think get this. So like 1980, I'm 8 years old or whatever I was, and and somebody, I don't know how I got it or who got it for me, but somebody gave me the big Marvel Comics special edition Empire Strikes Back, you know, the oversized magazine comic book adaptation. And I mean, I read that thing to death, you know. Imagine it's like the best of both worlds colliding. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then the other big one for me early on was the Creepshow comic book in 1982 when I was 10. So I was at a bookstore. I'd seen the movie Creepshow. My dad was like, didn't care about taking me to see monster movies. and then at the bookstore I see a Creepshow book, you know. And it's the comic, and that's the first time I really. It's not the first time I saw Bernie Wrightson's artwork, but it's the first time. It's the first time I saw a comic book and I liked the artwork so much that I flipped back to the front and find out what's the name of the guy who made this artwork. Wow. Because I want to draw like that when I grow up. And I don't exactly, but
no, but there's a nice style to it. Exactly. It's very reminiscent of that time, that, you know, the line work, this is one of the reasons why I love the books, is because like I can't really see because there's a glare in it. I'll post it up anyways. But like the sketching, the what's it called?
Ink brush.
But like even just the line works, hatching, yes, cross hatching, and even the hatching, the way you do it, and it's where the monster is, it's, you know, nice and clean, but it's very chaotic sometimes, but there's purpose to it. It gives depth, it gives, you know, dimension to it. So definitely one of the main reasons why I loved your artwork. Then I got into your books, got into your storytelling, and I was like, well, you know what, he's a very good writer too. So, you know, gobble that up. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, that was so when I saw Bernie Wrightson's artwork in Creepshow, it was like, man, comic books are cool. Like this is a thing that you can, like, when you're a grown up, you can have a job doing this stuff. like you can write stories and draw pictures at the same time. That's what I want to do. And then as far as collecting it was still a few years later, after having a lot of these random things, that I started to get hooked on. Like, you know, friends at school were bringing in their copies of X-Men. Right. You know,
that was huge. That era was bonkers.
Yeah, so X-Men and another one that really got me hooked too was Weird War Tales. Okay. Have you ever seen that comic book?
I don't think so. I'll have to bring it up. Maybe the cover will jump at me, but at the moment the title doesn't ring a bell.
DC Comics did this series.
What was it called? Sorry.
Weird War Tales. It's a series about. It's like the Twilight Zone during war.
Okay.
Like
wow.
weird supernatural things that happened during different wars. and the issues that grabbed me was they had certain characters that would come back every now and then.
Okay.
And there was this set of characters that they called the Creature Commandos.
Okay.
Where the US Army actually made a vampire, a Frankenstein monster, and a werewolf.
Wow.
And set them loose on the enemy during World War II.
I can see that being a tactical work. Yeah. Absolutely.
So as a kid, what could be cooler than that? When I saw that, I was hooked. So
and now as a grown-up, do you still collect comic books or any type of comics in particular?
Not current ones as much, but I'm crazy, ridiculous collector of like collected editions and reprint editions and omnibus books.
Omnibuses, right?
And Masterworks books and things like that, and trade paperbacks. Like for me. Like, I know there's a lot of comic book fans that are frustrated where when the modern comics change, it's not like the ones when they were a kid, so they don't collect or they get mad. They don't want to, what I'm talking about, because there's nothing new. But I honestly never really felt that way. Okay. To me, reading comics is sort of like reading my favorite novels. Like I'll go back and read my favorite Stephen King novel 10 times, and I feel that way. But I feel that way about comics too. Like, I kind of don't care that the new ones aren't appealing to me like the old ones were, because I still got all the old ones.
Right, exactly.
When I'm in the mood for X-Men, I'll just drag out my collection of my collected edition with all the Paul Smith issues in it. You know what I mean? And Spider-Man 2. It's like, I'd rather read the old ones anyway. That defines what that character was for me when it mattered. So I don't know. I never felt. I guess it's frustrating for the sake of the institution of mainstream comics.
Right.
But it kind of sucks to think kids aren't getting them as cool as what I got. But everybody thinks that. Everybody thinks that. So,
exactly. I think that at some point we're gonna have that evolution where, like, even your kids are gonna have the same when they grow up and be like, oh, it's not what I remembered, and then you're gonna be like, oh, you know what? There was like that distinction we made as that call we made back then.
Yeah.
Like for the whole MCU and DCU, if ever later on, there's gonna be a trend. It's gonna go up, it's gonna go down, and then there's gonna be these reboots, right? All these stuff are gonna come back up from the dead, and what is that gonna look like? Is gonna be true to those movies, then that's gonna be another. So we'll see.
But I don't know. I like reading the old ones anyway. So those are the artists that inspired me, and I feel like every time I look at some of those guys, I learn something. So
very cool.
More fun to look at the old stuff.
And talking about so we talked about the influences, the stuff that you read. Now for your own work, so part of your art process, maybe we can go through that together. Like, how do you? It's so detailed, and I mean, there's parts like if I were to, I'll put up a piece where there's so much details and intricate work that goes on, and there's so much, again, layering. So even if we're talking about, let's say, the first issue here, you have. You would think the details are put last, but it kind of feels like everything is detailed. So where do you start? Where do you know from your thought idea to putting it down from pen to paper?
Let me give you a demonstration here.
Yeah, sure. Cool.
I'm gonna change my screen here.
Yeah.
To tell me if you can see this sketch.
Yeah, I can see the ink work and your workspace.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the sketch for Wulf and Batsy #1 cover.
Right. And it's a little different from what we currently know it as. Right.
That's the sketch. So just to walk you through how I did this one real quick.
Absolutely. This is amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you. So border. So to do this one, I was really thinking, oh my gosh, this is the first issue of my comic book. I better make the characters look cool. So I started with Wulf because he matters most to me.
Very cool.
And I have to get him right. So I drew his head separately. Then I drew his body. Got him down the way I wanted him. Got him sized the way I wanted him.
Wow.
And then I decided to start putting in Batsy. First, in order for him not to distract me, turn his opacity way down, and then start drawing Batsy. So I put her in just basic figure, just tried to get her, right. Of course, I probably did this however many times to get it the way I wanted it. But I have these guides I use to get it right in the middle. I wanted her right in the center, looking right at you. So these guides help you do that. And then start putting in her clothes, her basic costume, hair. And
you start seeing the details really popping out from
ground. And then I did this kind of white mask behind her just to block Wulf out. And then I can bring him back up. And then I needed something back here, obviously, so I put in a moon because that just seemed right to frame them in a circle. And because it draws your eye in. And originally, the original plan was I had these blood drips coming down, and I even took these blood drips to final. Like I inked them and colored them on Photoshop and everything, and they were dark red, but it was too distracting. After I looked at it all colored, it was just too distracting. So I ended up taking the drips
too busy. Oh
yeah. So I actually had to mask it off on the final the final piece because they were drawn on the piece. So that's the sketch for issue 1. I can show you a sketch for issue 2.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so
wow. So like you see like a piece like this with the tree in the background, you have more of a movement going on. It's more dynamic. It's so like how would you like is it the same process again in terms of like getting character by character and element by element?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, this one was, so I got this story in this issue where this is where the build-up pays off and we get the violence. And Wulf goes to town and attacks everybody. So I knew off the bat I wanted to have him doing something savage and just looking badass.
Fierce.
So so I drew a typical pose of him roaring, that kind of thing. And then it's like, what am I gonna do with Batsy? I gotta do something different. And I probably did who knows how many poses or whatever that didn't work. But I finally came up with this one. Because there's a thing in the story where she rips her own eyeball out.
Yes.
Because she uses it to see, which is an idea I actually got from an old vampire legend that there's a breed of vampires that could actually do that. So put it in the story. But
very cool. That's an Easter egg on its own. That's crazy.
but I came up with this sketch of her like just thrusting the eyeball right at the reader. and then it's like, okay, well that's fun, but then what am I going to do with the background? And this is probably the laziest solution ever, but I was just like, I don't know, I'm feeling this crazy kind of just like slash, up the middle of the page and diagonal, and make it a tree, behind them, and put all these like crazy branches coming down and
No, that's great because I mean, for a predominant moment, they're actually like near the forest or in the forest. So
I will take that digital sketch. And the only reason I sketch digitally is because it's so, again, like the tools make it so much more fluid to change ideas or correct things. Yeah. Like I was saying, like if one character's too big, you can shrink them.
You can scale them back.
Move them around, get the composition the way you want it. So it's really good for that. But I'm a traditional artist when it comes to doing the final piece. So after I do a sketch like that, I will take that digital sketch and I'll print it out on my printer, and then I'll put it on a light box.
Okay.
Take a piece of 11 by 17 bristle board like this, lay that on top of the light box, or on top of the printout of the sketch on the light box.
Right.
And then with the light box on, I can just trace off that sketch onto the final board. And then when it comes to drawing, man, it's all about ink bottles and
the OG stuff.
Yeah, and I got my brushes. These are my weapons of choice here. I got this old thing that doesn't even look like a brush. It looks like a broom. I've had it so long.
It's like missing a few bristles on it.
So, but I'll tell you what, there's no better tool on earth that's for me for drawing like grass and werewolf fur.
Yeah, that's
anything like that. Anything that's just like really
very
organic
clever.
And so an old rotten brush like that helps. and then I got like pen nibs. This is actually a hot quill pen nib.
Okay.
For dipping in the ink. And then I got, this is actually a calligraphy pen.
What? Is it to make like sharper
making borders?
Okay.
Straight lines, that kind of thing. So Yeah,
very cool. I mean, that is quite the extensive process to because like I've also had a commission done, and you can even receiving it even today. I was looking at it off, without the frame, and you can still see the ink marks, the trails, the way how sometimes let's say make a line but drag it to make certain depth into it, and I'll put that image closer so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, that I think that's one of the things that appealed to me the most. It's not just a clean shape, and I think now everything is very miniaturized or kind of minimalist, if you will, just to get everything out and going. But your work it's very extensive, very there's a lot of depth into it. So that's one thing I've always appreciated, and I hope with the stuff that you continue with, that you keep that spark and that passion into having those kind of line work into there.
Yeah, I like doing, if I'm going to color my work, I'll color on Photoshop. I like doing digital coloring, but for actual drawing, I love using ink brushes because, I don't know, I just look at the artists that inspire me, whether it's Bernie Wrightson or Jordi Bernay is a huge artist for me, and also Graham Ingalls, master of inking with a brush. Even a guy like Bill Watterson who does Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah, all those guys are drawing with brushes.
Right.
You can tell by looking at it, and to me, it's so much more organic. Like, digital tools are cool and everything, but they're so controlled, and there's so much room to make it perfect.
There's less chaos. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Exactly. I like controlled chaos.
Yeah.
But also, like, the fun of drawing with an ink brush is you're sort of half telling it what to do, and it's and sort of half reacting to whatever it does.
Right.
Because
it lives. You're right.
Because the ink is liquid, and those bristles, and when they're going against that paper, it's like it's alive, and it's kind of doing its own thing in a way. And there's times when it surprises me. And maybe I'll get an effect that I didn't expect to get by accident, or maybe it'll mess up, or maybe it'll just make something look a certain way that makes me rethink it and go, oh, you know what, I could change that around and make it like this. That might be cool.
That actually brings me to my next question as well. So, for example, having these pieces or even a commission, when do you know, for yourself, like, this is enough? Like, being a perfectionist, or a lot of artists will work and rework, and even years later come back and rework something. When do you know, like, okay, that's enough, I can put down my pencil?
I always get to a point where I think it's done, but then I force myself to put it away and not look at it for 24 hours.
Okay.
And usually if I do that, then when I come back to it and look at it 24 hours later, if it needs anything else, it jumps right out at me.
Okay. Wow.
Whereas when you've been working on it a long time, it's like you can't see the forest for the trees. You get to a point, too
deep into it.
Yeah, you get to a point where you're too close to it, and you can't see what it needs. But if you just put it away, come back fresh the next day, if it needs anything, it immediately pops out. If there's anything wrong, you can go, oh, I got to do something about that. Or if it's okay, sometimes it's just okay. It's like, oh, all right, I guess that one's done.
And you're good. And and that's another thing too. And with the artists we've had on the show, that's another thing. That's even a word of wisdom. Our recent artist who came on, so Boom from Boomeries, had said, is that sometimes okay is good. Like, it's not necessarily every piece needs to be the masterpiece. You'll want to have pieces where you'll showcase and you're in that rhythm, and you'll go all in. Great, by all means, invest your time into it, but you can't get stuck on that all the time. So great words of wisdom for sure. Obviously, we have the monsters, we have the horror genre. One thing it's only maybe not recently, but one thing that surprised me was dinosaurs. I saw you had made a book on how to draw dinosaurs, and it threw me off, but I was like, it makes complete sense, because it's like there's they are beasts or animals and vicious, if you will. And it was I think one of the outliers of your repertoire that I was familiar with. Is there anything else you would say is your specialty?
Besides monsters and dinosaurs
and like
creatures,
Wulf and Batsy and is there anything that like we wouldn't know today, but like this is something that you have a knack in doing, and you're like, hey, maybe you haven't incorporated yet, maybe one day it will? I mean, I don't know if Batsy's gonna meet a dinosaur, but
I don't know. That's a tough question. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if it's that tough, maybe there isn't at the moment.
I can tell you boy, that's a tough question. I really don't know. I really don't know how to answer that. I'm pretty good at drawing trees.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Spooky trees.
Spooky trees.
That's fun to draw. I like organic environments. I like stories that take place in, organic environments, outdoorsy environments, forests or graveyards or anything like that.
Even indoors, I've seen
water.
Yeah, and if not commissions, I've seen you done. Well, mine's, for example, this one here is kind of like a fun house, where like even the wood, the planks of wood, the webbing, the cobwebs, the stones, the granite. And I've seen you do also, I think there was an attic you had done at some point where like almost every plank of wood was defined.
Oh yeah, it's fun to do that stuff. Yeah, this is a really strange thing that I never even realized I was doing, and somebody pointed it out to me, and then I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. For some reason, I don't know where this comes from, but a lot of my comic book stories end up having scenes in tunnels, like underground tunnels.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know where, but somebody pointed out to me, he's like, you're always taking your characters down into the sewers. Or...
Oh wow! I've never paid attention, but you're right. I guess yeah.
I didn't realize I was doing it either, but yeah, or secret passages or things like that. Like
secret passages, yes. You do have that. I thought that was just part of the kind of the era, like the genre.
Yeah.
Of having the door spin, open.
Yeah, yeah.
The Scooby-Doo-ish, type of
I love anytime there's an action scene in a movie where somebody's down in some horrible underground, dark, spooky place and they end up like up to their waist in water, and when things get aquatic, I don't know, that's just spooky and cool to me. I love that environment. So those were a lot of like early assignments early on, that when I was first just getting my first few opportunities to do anything in print. And I will say that in the 90s, there was that whole Jurassic Park craze.
Oh, absolutely. I'm one of those. I love Jurassic Park. I mean, I think it's one of my favorite movies of maybe all time, but it has a special connection for sure, with myself and everybody around me, I think.
And I mean, I had a love for dinosaurs since I was a little kid, but Jurassic Park just brought it all back. And one of the very first places where my art was ever published was a magazine called Prehistoric Times. That was a small circulation fan niche kind of magazine in the 1990s. It had a pretty big following actually, but it was a small independent kind of thing.
Okay, so I wouldn't be able to find it on eBay then.
I don't know. You might. I mean, it was popular in the 90s among people who were into dinosaurs.
Very cool.
And I did a lot of illustrations for that. I was thinking about trying to get into that. There was this one artist that did this whole book called Predatory Dinosaurs of the World, and it was all about the theropod family of the Tyrannosaurus rexes, and those are my favorites, and all their relatives, and I just love that book so much. And there was another guy who specialized in doing paintings of dinosaurs, and I got really, really interested in maybe I could be a paleo illustrator. And I was really, really trying to do that, and then I started reading interviews with those people. And it's like basically there's like 10 guys in the world who do that for a real career, and they make enough money at it to make a living on, and all the other stragglers following behind them are poverty stricken because there's so few jobs. It's such a narrow field. And it scared me out of it, where I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to chance that. So I'll go back to monsters.
Wow.
And that's when I started doing monster comics again.
And another thing that I've noticed, well, maybe it's not a specialty, it's something that I've always enjoyed in all of your books as well, is your ads, the quirky X-ray, glasses, and the call now for this. It's always been one of my favorites going through your books, and I'm glad you kept them in this book too. Yeah. So
I almost didn't.
Oh, really?
Almost didn't.
It's so quirky and it's fun, and it's exactly what you've seen in every comic books from ever since. So I was like, I love that this is, and it's, again, people, this is not something that he like cut and paste, or it's him drawing his own little, sometimes there's puns, sometimes it's just like a spin on characters he has, and you definitely want to check it out. I'll actually put a page up here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. It's such a fun time, and I'm glad you kept it. So speaking of the Alterna comics, where are we heading with this? So now we have issue 3 that is out, because obviously you guys came onto this video either from there, or you guys, if you guys haven't been on it, they usually have a, I would say a seasonal, if not launch, with Alterna, and right now I think they're using indiegogo at the moment. So you can definitely check the link below, which would link to their main page, because I think now they've redirected it to their just one website, and you'll also find all of Bryan's links below anyways, so you can always follow him and find where his work's going, anyways. That all being said, where are we going with Wulf and Batsy in this case?
Okay, well, you talked at the beginning about the trade paperback stories that I did when I was self-publishing them before I got picked up by Alterna. So the Alterna series is, those. those books. That's what I was doing. I was making those trade paperbacks when I first started, just on my own, just self-publishing them. And Alterna decided to pick up Wulf and Batsy as a regular ongoing comic book series, and
very cool of them.
The conversation from the beginning was, is this going to be all new content or new stories, or are we just going to start at the beginning and reprint all the old stories? So that's what we decided to do, because we wanted to make it complete. So the Alterna series is basically reprinting all the old stories I did, basically every story I did, starting from the very beginning, the very first Wulf and Batsy story I did, like in 2000, 2001, following through chronologically all the way up to present. But one thing that Peter Simeti requested when we started was, he said, I like these story arcs, but I'm also a big fan of single issue standalone stories, where you just have one contained story in one issue. And he said, I'd really like to have something like that in between the story arcs to sort of break up the pace and give people who read the old trade paperbacks something new,
something fresh.
So I've been working on a lot of new stories, because the thing is, I mean, I have a million little short ideas for short Wulf and Batsy stories that could be single issues, one and done stories. But in the years when I was making the trade paperback collections, I had to really choose my battles. So I was trying to get all the big important stories out of my system first, and make sure that they were, the ones I really felt like I had to do. This is the big story, And I couldn't do everything. So there was a lot of stories that I started drawing of Wulf and Batsy, and I'd get like 20 pages in, and I'd be like, I like this, but it's not as important as the other one. I have to put this away.
20 pages in, that's heavy. Well, I mean, for me, I think it's heavy, but maybe for you, it's not.
Let me give you an example. So, if you've read the trade paperbacks, you know that after volume 1 trade paperback, the one you held up, that has a story called Bizarre Experiments.
Okay.
And at the end of that book, Wulf and Batsy have found a home, a temporary home, and they're staying at the mansion of the bad guy that they've taken over. Well, the next story I wanted to tell had them kind of on the road traveling again.
Okay.
Which is the volume 2 trade paperback.
Right.
But I had that one, yes.
Yeah.
But I had an idea. Well, here's the question that nobody ever asked is, why are they wandering again? They had a home at the end of the last book. Why are they on?
True.
Well, I had an idea, a whole story about why they left that place and were on the road again. And I had it written, and I drew the first chapter of it. But then I was like, I want to draw the volume 2 story. It's just it's bigger, it's more important, and I couldn't do everything. I just had to put that one aside, and I just jumped into that volume 2 book, and nobody ever questioned it. but it always kind of bugged me that there's that gap there where it's not explained why they suddenly found a place to stay and then are suddenly on, because the whole thrust of the comic book series, the whole premise is they're wandering the earth looking for a place to call home.
Right.
So they found a home.
Right.
Why are they on the road again? So I did this. I started a whole 4-issue miniseries that was going to happen after that. That was going to explain what happened next in between. Wow. And I abandoned it after the first chapter to do that story, volume 2 story, because I was just way more passionate about that one. And I said, I'll get back to this, and I never got back to it. So that's been sitting there unfinished since like 2009. And I thought, with this Alterna situation, where Pete wants stories in between the stories.
Right.
That's a perfect opportunity to jump on something like that.
Absolutely.
Whole other new story arc that nobody's seen before. I can finish it off the way I wanted to, and it can be in between those story arcs. And you're going to have 4 issues there.
Very cool.
That you've never seen, but they fit into that timeline. Right.
That's amazing. Actually, it's like a little mini series, but at the same time, it's like it only enhances everything around it. It's kind of like, just quote unquote, because a lot of people are more familiar with, like, let's say the MCU stuff. So this is kind of like the Disney Plus stuff. So you may have seen it, may not seen it.
Yeah.
Will it add more to the adventure? Maybe not, but have seen it. It does make the adventure more, enriched, and you get to be more involved in what's going on. So that's amazing.
And the bottom line is, it's like, I'm partly doing it for me, because it's like I wanted to see that story happen. I just had to choose my battles, and the other one felt more important to do at that time. So here's a great opportunity to do it, and along with that, I'm also doing like new little single issue stories that can kind of go in between. Okay. So there's some new short stories coming up too.
So will we also see Magnum Orgus something down the line as well, or that's
way
too
down
much?
the road?
Okay.
No, it'll happen, but it's way down the road, and the chapters will have to be broken up a little differently, because it's
that's a lot thicker as a system.
Yeah.
I mean, this alone, these were like, this could be a brick on its own. So
yeah, and that 2-part story in those 2 trade paperbacks was basically done at a time when I'd kind of given up on any real publisher picking me up, and I was pretty much content to just self-publish. So I said, screw it, I don't care. I'm gonna make a graphic novel that is structured like a novel, where if there's a chapter that only needs to be 15 pages long, it'll be 15 pages long, and if there's a chapter that needs to be 90 pages long, that chapter will be 90 pages long, and I'm not going to worry about it. Wow. and I just made it my way. But now that out of nowhere Alterna picks me up, it's like I can't not publish that story, because that was kind of my big one. Like, that was the one I really was like trying to do something cool with, and it's got to be part of it, but it's just going to have to be broken up into issues, because obviously a real print publisher is going to have page count limits and things like that.
Right. Absolutely. And then spacing it out for the audience as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is amazing. So now you have it's being published by Alterna, and again, it's on a seasonal basis, so you'll probably have about 4 to 5 books out per year. Is that it? If the seasons, like,
roughly 4 a year, I hope.
Right.
Should be. I mean, it depends on Alterna's schedule.
Right, and depending on how things are rolling, with everything going on, which is, again, great. So this being said, for like all the years that you've been doing it on your own, and now being picked up and just rolling out your own art, creating your own art, doing commissions, the experience that you've had, if you were to talk to an inspiring artist, or even you a couple of years back, or somebody who's in the business, not a independent artist that is still plowing through, what are your words of wisdom to them?
This is okay. Here's my big piece of advice.
Go ahead.
If you're a comic book creator and you have that big epic dream graphic novel project in your head, like you're Watchmen,
right,
where it's going to be big and long and have all this complex giant cast of characters and interweaving
the full shebang,
subplots and all this stuff.
Right.
If you have that big giant epic project in your head, just make sure you get it done and out of your system and completely finished before you have a kid.
Okay.
Because Magnum Orgus, that big 2-part graphic novel you were just showing, I worked on it's roughly 550 pages. It's a huge story. That was my big epic I wanted to do, and I worked on it on the side of my day job and married life and everything else. It took me like 7 years to do it.
Wow.
I started it in 2010 and I finished it in April of 2017. My wife got pregnant, and we in December of 2016, and our baby, I think it was something like that, and our baby was born August of 2017, just months after I finished that book. and after our child was born, I realized just how little free time you have once you have children. and I kept thinking to myself, I can't believe I got I squeezed that through the gate before that happened because
oh
my
wow.
gosh, if that graphic novel was not finished yet after we had a baby, there's no way I still wouldn't have it finished right now. So I'm just saying.
Exactly.
If you've got that big Watchmen type epic graphic novel you want to do, just make sure you do it before you have a baby. There you go.
Turn it out. Exactly.
That's what I learned.
Well, there you go. And those are great words to live by. I mean, especially, people, I guess, don't realize, or sometimes, this becomes your everything, right? The book, having the time to pencil and having the whole process. But then when a new element comes in, especially something so, that's going to be predominant for everything else. And it's everything gets, put on the back burner, or, you have to make some shifts and sacrifices.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm very glad that not only these were able to come out, and then, you definitely made this whole thing work. I mean, look at you now with, things are rolling out. And I mean, from us here at TeamPunFun, we, wish you and your books much success. And we can't wait to see what else you have in store for us. And furthermore, we'll have hopefully other interviews together. If not, it'd be more project oriented. So if you have something that's, down the pipeline and we want to discuss a bit about that instead of having this, bigger interview, by all means, you're more than welcome to come back on the show. I mean, I had a great time with you. Like, absolutely. Is there anywhere else that we can find your work? So right now we have, Instagram, there's also Twitter that you're very active on as well. Is there anywhere else that we can locate any of your work, or just, indulge in, your Star Wars / MCU / comic book critique / everything?
I don't know. I try to post art on Instagram as often as I can, but there will be gaps where I'm not posting anything. But that's usually just because I'm working on new stuff that isn't ready to be shown yet.
Right.
I do goof off on Twitter a little too much. You can always tell when I'm stuck on the couch watching Peppa Pig with my 4-year-old, because I'm sitting like this with my phone over here, just sort of looking at it over behind her head, looking for things to talk about and trying to kill the boredom.
And Multiverse of Madness coming out soon. Are you excited for that?
What's that?
Multiverse of Madness?
Oh, yeah.
We just did an unboxing for the Doctor Strange Eye of Agamotto, and I mean, the feedback, people have been, messaging us like, oh, hey, do you think it's going to be as crazy as, the Spider-Man movies or Endgame? And I'm like, I think those are the epitomes of, what Marvel is intended, to push out. So, very cool.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Doctor Strange is not a character I was super into as a comic book reader.
Likewise.
But the movies made me love him.
Yeah.
And he's now like one of the coolest.
Definitely nailed it.
Yeah, and he's like one of the coolest characters in the whole MCU to me now, which is crazy because I just wasn't that into him when I was a reader. But
absolutely, and there's so much depth, and I love what they did with the what ifs. He's not all the heroes are, on the pedestal that we put them on. They also have their, universe wrecking phases, and it's amazing. So
I'm definitely looking forward to that.
So all the links for Bryan's, so if you want to follow Bryan, you can basically find them in our description. Also for these comic books, so now for issue 1, 2, and 3, depending on when you're watching this video, but you can find them on alternacomics.com. I think most of them are still available, if anything. To make it even sweeter, we're actually going to give away a copy of issue 1. So all we're going to request is that you are a subscriber to our channel and that you leave in a comment below what during the art process was your favorite part, or which of the covers of the 3 that you've seen today was one of your favorites. This will have you entered in to win issue 1 signed by Bryan himself. I mean, what a great way to start your collection. And if you already have issues before, hey, what better to have a signed, edition. To tie it all in, we always, embarrass our artists before we go. Do you have any spooktacular puns that you would like to leave our spectators with?
I hope you'll check out my comic book. You'll have a howling good time, and I hope you'll go Batsy for it.
Perfect. Oh, hey, I think you're the first one to really punch it as we got it. That is great. So if you've enjoyed this video, we definitely suggest you hit that like button, Also, you definitely want to hit that subscribe button. This way, not only, you get to stay on top every time we have a new artist on our show, but also don't forget, if you add that comment below, you're entered to win a issue 1 of Wulf and Batsy signed by Bryan Baugh. And I mean, thank you, Bryan Baugh, for coming on the show. And again, much success to you. And I hope once more we'll have future projects together.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks again, guys. Peace.
See you later.